In a world with so many stories, from movies to television, and of course, comic books, comes a story that's only available in one of the three mediums I listed earlier. What you are about to see in this trailer is a character debut like you've never seen before. And now, we are just buying dramatic time by repeating the same shots that you just got done watching. We are truly very sorry about that. And now, introducing Rice Christopher!
Recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, this is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast.
It's time for lunchtime. I'm Anthony.
I'm David.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
I'm Kevin.
Welcome to a Crimson Cowl Comic Club creator interview. And you're looking at all these people on the YouTube screen. You're wondering, like, okay, David's here. What's he going to be talking about? Hey, Kevin Wolf is here. Past guest with the creator interview and, recent return guest for the comic club. But actually, we're going to be talking about something that I created. So I am the subject of this creator interview, Anthony Laatsch, as I am now a creator of Rice Christopher, the Wednesday afternoon special, a full-on comic book. So this is a creator interview. Normally when we do these things, it's me bringing on a guest with our club, and we all have questions for them. This is the awkward part where, as the host and moderator, that's usually kind of organizing those questions. I have to do that for myself in a way. So what we're going to do here is me kind of giving an explanation of what this comic book is. And then throughout the episode, whenever any of you have questions, just feel free to throw it in there right away, and we can answer those for you. Yeah, or try to. I don't usually have to prepare answers. I just have to prepare questions. So this will be a fun experiment. But to give everybody a little insight on what's happening here is that Rice Christopher is an idea that I came up in 2023 when I was scrolling through some story ideas on my phone. Anytime that I come up with like a funny name or maybe a sentence, a catchphrase of some sort, I always have like an ongoing story idea file. And one of those was simply Rice Christopher, which probably was maybe 5 years prior to that. But it wasn't until 2023 when I was scrolling through and I'm like, oh yeah, Rice Christopher. I like that kind of fun little pun of a name. And I wonder what would that would look like. And I decided to just jump over into Procreate. At this time, I've been drawing a lot more. After my Gucci Nana print, and then on the starting Cartoonist by Night, prepping stuff to go into my first Comic-Con as an artist alongside with David here for Crimson Cowl Media. So I picked up the Procreate on the iPad and I started to sketch to see what this character would look like. And what people should be seeing now is the first rough sketch of Rice Christopher. And I figured I didn't really think about it beyond the name, and I just started drawing the head. And I'm like, all right, I'll give him a body. It would be kind of blocky and squarey in a sense, and I'm like, all right, I'll kind of give him a nice little like sweater and whatever. And didn't really think much about it. And then as I jumped into the coloring and the inking and everything, this became the first finished piece of Rice Christopher. And just to confirm, we're all seeing this on the screens, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. So just make sure everybody's Windows settings are all good. So with this one here, that's when I decided I'm like, all right, I'll give him a suit. I made it a little less blocky as far as his arms and everything, kind of gave him more of just a bigger muscular build. You'll see a different spelling with the last name there. But after doing that, what was fun is that I shared it with some friends. I shared it with one friend and said, "Hey, can you show this to your? I think he was 4 at the time, your 4-year-old son." And I wanted just a reaction of what we'll get from this character. Don't say that I did it. Just show him this picture and see what it is. And the response I got back was, "That's weird." And I'm like, you know what? that works because it is weird. It's very weird. But I thought that was kind of funny, just kind of getting that response. But the interesting thing is that I never ended up putting it online. Normally in 2023, I posted almost every single day on the Instagram and the Facebook pages for my art accounts. And but that was one thing I never posted because there was a part of me that was thinking, oh, maybe I could do something with this, and I don't want to reveal it until I kind of refine the idea. And then Cartoonist by Night happened, and then basically I had no time for any of that kind of creative venture to try to tell stories. Prior to that, I had done one short story with Matt Fife from Cartoonist by Night, Happy Astronaut, and the upcoming Slaughter Otter, and done a 3-pager for a future publication of All Yeah Comics. But at that point, I wouldn't be like a consecutive, sequential story artist in that sense. And I wasn't going to dive into that when starting Cartoonist by Night and organizing the drawing show and stuff, which ended up being a good thing because I think in the whole year that I sat on that image that we saw, I only got better with the programs and just learning a lot from the Cartoonist by Night friends and learning from guests that we had on the show. That one year after the fact, that's when I decided, hey, Rice Christopher, this might be something I can actually tackle now. So in February of 2024, I think is when I started to get serious about it, and I didn't do any additional sketches in the when doing the comic. I just kind of jumped in, but as I was trying to think of a funny idea, I think this one still dates back to 2023. Um, I had done this drawing here, and don't ask me why I didn't put legs on them. It's maybe a version of trying not to draw feet, but I was mostly just trying to work on poses and stuff. So I did that one. You see some different style of sunglasses and stuff like that. Um, but doing that had me lead into an idea of giving this character trying to find the shape of this character and then doing another very quick drawing. I had this pose of the big punching pose and trying to think of like, all right, now I'm starting to, especially with the fist, kind of be like, all right, maybe his fist and body will kind of resemble the head shape in a way. And this is an interesting one because this is back when he had 5 fingers. In the comic book, as I double checked my cover, which I had to do a couple times when drawing, I've decided to only give him 4 fingers. So the comic got done much quicker because I had to draw, 2 less fingers if both hands were in the frame there. Um, but yeah, doing that, then that's when I started to get the idea of having um, there was going to be a grandkid character. And so I haven't written any dialogue for this. This is all still 2023, I believe. And then I had like a fun pun idea And so this is just a photo of the digital screen here, where you have a little Grand Crispy, if you will, saying, "Grandpa, can you tell me about your life?" And he's like, "Of course, it's quite the treat." And this is when I had the idea of saying, like, all right, maybe the kids, if you're a child and you're this crispy rice type of character, then you're going to have like jimmies and sprinkles and stuff like that. It was just a fun little idea there. But so that idea sat there for a while, and we'll eventually see how that turned into the structure of the book that I am now going to be properly promoting. Just closing some windows behind the scenes here. So when I started this book here, Rice Christopher, the Wednesday afternoon special, um, basically the elevator pitch is that it's a crispy rice man who goes on adventures, and it is meant to be for an all ages fun. You know, both young and old can read this comic book. It was going to be just silly adventure, kind of superhero type stuff, and that kind of gives some idea of a story structure. I thought that going back to that drawing of the kid, the rice, the crispy rice kid and everything, I thought, hey, maybe that could be a story format where these grandkids are asking their grandpa, Rice Christopher, to tell them adventures of his grand life that I never even knew what it would entail. Um, and I thought, hey, that would be a fun way to kind of set up Archie-sized stories of 4 to 5 pages, where it just starts with the kids just saying, "Hey, tell us a story for bedtime," and then it's like, "All right, well, here's a tale from," and then I could just do any kind of century, any kind of decade, any kind of time period, genre, whatever I would be in the mood for, and it just kind of allowed me to just make up this history and not have to worry about, all right, here's issue one and here's what happened. Now issue two, I got to reflect on what just happened here. I like the idea of Archie Comics being a big influence of just you can just pick up any story, any digest. You can just dive in, and you'll it doesn't matter. And they go into all these different time periods and wacky stuff too. So a lot of Archie Comics inspiration came into developing how I was going to tell this story, and this is when the influence of Ryan Brown came in. Ryan Brown, who wouldn't really be categorized as an all ages cartoonist, family friendly artist and storyteller, um, but through his works of God Hates Astronauts and Blast Furnace. Those are creator owned titles that are just the wackiest things. Like whatever he's his own boss, whatever he wants to draw, just goofy stuff. But Blast Furnace is a title that is started off as a comic book challenge that I think it was 1 hour a day that he would draw a page of this idea that I don't know if he had a gem of an idea or germ of an idea, whatever the term is, going into it, but the idea was that every day he would spend 1 hour on a page and just leave it as is, go on to the next thing, but not think about story, and just literally just make it up, improvise in an improvised style, not write any script for it, and just let whatever flows from the brain to the pen in an hour time limit. So not at all putting myself on the level of a Ryan Brown, because he is a super immensely talented and gifted storyteller and comedic writer. But I like that structure idea. I didn't time myself. I would just chip away at it, but I just took it panel by panel without really any idea, and knowing that I was going to start with those the grandchildren. I didn't really know what the dialogue would be, and page one sets up the story, and then page two just dives into it, and I'm like, okay, here's the story. This one's going to be a real treat. And then once I got to that panel, I'm just like, once upon a time, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to draw this scenario, and I came up with it was going to be a mountain climbing thing, and it doesn't all exist. The story that's in this comic book doesn't all exist on a climbing a snowy mountain. It goes through a couple different scenarios, but that's as much as I thought about it, and basically would just let the improvised style kind of lead me to it. That if I wrote out a script and I got to it and looked, being like, oh, that's right, I got to do this on page 17 now, and oh, this is boring. past version of me, thought it was a fun idea, but now I actually have to draw it. I like the idea that I didn't have any path, and that if I got sick of a scene, I could just open up a portal, which you do see in the issue, and just jump to a whole different kind of climate and everything. And it would still advance the story and take it to the next little next natural progression. But I think me not having a script really helped make this comic book happen rather than get halfway through and just really have it become a chore and me not having fun with it. Because ultimately, this book is a hobby. It's not meant to be anything more than, hey, I made something. Now we'll see if people want to buy it. Um, but yeah, it was an improvised story. But when I did get towards the end and the last 5 pages, knowing that it had to be a satisfying ending, that there will be people that I have to rely on to want to buy it and be satisfied and not come back, and write me online being like, "Hey, can I have my money back? Because this story was so off the wall, and it doesn't even seem like you had a script for it." So during those last 5 pages, I didn't write a script, but I came up with the last panel, and I kind of knew, okay, this is going to make it full circle, and I knew where I had to go, and that drove me into to complete the story there. So that is the overall kind of idea and pitch and creation of that. As I queue up some other images in the background, if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in, and that might be part of what I have prepared as well. But if there's anything, let me know as I set up my next screen.
Question, Anthony.
Yes.
So in writing the stories, did from the creative perspective, did it flow as soon as you started, or I mean, because at times sometimes ideas don't flow, and you have to really dig in and figure something out. So how was that process for you?
So I would say that once again, starting with like a snowy mountain type of scene, um, I knew that the character was climbing a mountain, and I knew that as I'm drawing this, I'm thinking head being like, all right, this has to go somewhere. What's going to happen? And I haven't showed too much from the comic that's out there, but just to kind of show this specific scene here, showing him climbing the mountain, setting up the story, and then just having a real awesome, funny shot of seeing what this character looks like beyond how we meet him in that first page. And when quote unquote writing it in improvised style, it got to the point where I'm like, all right, he climbs to the top of a mountain. What happens? I'm like, something. Okay, there's got to be a character up there. But I'm like, well, it can't just be all dialogue. There's got to be some action. So that's when I came up with an idea to include that maybe there's going to be a character that's going to be halfway up this mountain that you're going to have to battle to get to. Once again, that giant question mark on why I'm even going up there. On the cover, we do have a polar bear that's advertised. Um, so I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, so coming up with that, what drove me was literally just like almost drawing it as if I'm already reading a comic of like turning the page, being like, okay, this what's going to be the next part. But then in the moment, just being like, okay, people are going to turn it. Now this is going to be it. And whatever I was in the mood to draw, kind of dictated where I was, you know, I'm saying writing a script, which I didn't write a script. Um, but it all kind of, I think it helped. It was structured by saying, character here, I have to jump over to here, and this character is now going to have something that to give Rice Christopher, and that item is now going to have to be used for something. I don't know what. And it literally, like, it just kept going all over the place, but in an entertaining way. And I think a lot of it was me just trying to be maybe disguise it with jokes. So if people are kind of wondering, like, all right, this story is a mess. What's going on here? Hopefully they're laughing at that time and maybe distracted and they're just on for the ride, basically. And I did structure it to make sure that for big page reveals. Now, when you do Marvel and DC Comics, sometimes you don't have the power, from what I understand, to dictate what is going to land as a turnover page reveal. Sometimes you might have a half page Snickers ad that gets thrown in there with the characters. Um, sometimes you maybe don't have the editorial direction to savor those page reveal moments. But for me, with me knowing that I was going to do 20 pages of interior, if there was a big moment, I would build up to a page turn character reveal. There was one that I'm like, I don't have enough story to get to this moment, so I threw in a fake page, a page of fake ads essentially. So knowing that that would give me my page reveal eventually, so it was fun to kind of look at basically what the experience would be as someone's reading and flipping it. That's basically how I drew the comic, if that makes any sort of sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Kind of dictate the reading experience of a physical book. Jump over to Kirby. You got a question there?
Yeah, you're beginning your publishing run with getting started in your comic book experience with all that stuff. But young Anthony in one day, I'm sure got something published, comic related, either written work or drawing that you did. And what was the first one? I know you probably told me before and showed me it, but
So mine would be without just like mentioning the details of the location and everything, but believe it or not, I had won an art contest in my grade school, and it was for designing the mascot for my grade school. There is an awesome photo of myself and my mother wearing the sweatshirts with my art on that very recently, at the time of this recording, was shared with me. I think she shared with me a couple weeks ago, and that kind of reminded, because there's moments of me where I totally forgot that that happened, and I don't even have a an actual T-shirt of that anymore. I don't remember the last time I've seen one in person, but at my place of employment, I saw that there was a customer and their young child came in. This was maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the young child was wearing that mascot design shirt. And I saw it, and once again, I was like, I forgot I did that. And there was no comfortable way of like, telling the parent, being like, hey, I drew that. Like, I just let it go. And because I was just kind of taken aback, being like, oh, wow, I forgot all about that. Um, cool,
I'm
cool.
just imagining, hey, that's my shirt.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's where I was. That's what I was trying to think of, like the best way to approach it, and I thought the best way was just to say, "Hey, good morning," and just leave it at that. But now that I had that shock of remembering that, if I see one again, I'm prepared to react to it and everything. But because it probably doesn't even have my signature on or anything either, so. So to backpedal a little bit on the creation of Rice Christopher, I mentioned Cartoonist by Night, Matt Fife and Matt Rogers, who are the co-creators of Happy Astronaut and the upcoming Slaughter Otter. And there was a moment in issue 2 that Matt Rogers kind of was putting in some cameos, putting some background stuff. There's a wrestling scene, there's some characters, and I think it led to me. He was either asking us or I suggested it, but I'm like, hey, if you need, to fill a panel, you could always put this Rice Christopher guy into the comic book. And then once again, this thing wasn't known beyond just family and friends. I showed a couple people that design, and I had said that, and I think I had a confirmation that it was going to happen, but I didn't actually see it until I got the physical comic. So here's Happy Astronaut #2 from Keenspot Entertainment. Go to keenspotshop.com or ask your local retailer. They might be able to order back issues. And I have a better image here that I'm going to share on the share screen. But this is technically in October of 2023, the publication debut of Rice Christopher, in a 2-panel scene that, spoiler alert, doesn't really pan out for this character. And but this was fun. This was Matt Rogers' take on that drawing that we saw earlier, and it was just kind of cool because at this point I was never going to do anything with this character, but once I started to, Matt Rogers, started to have a couple bragging rights of saying, he's like, remember what I did to Rice Christopher? And I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna find a way to retcon what happened in Happy Astronaut. But it is kind of fun that that kind of happened and kind of silently in the background. I never talked and promoted about it, saying, "Hey, here's a character I did that was put into a comic book." Because there's another cameo in there that I actually show up as a character myself. Um, so I still just kind of let that as kind of background fodder, if you will. Um, but this Happy Astronaut #2 not only has the first appearance of Rice Christopher, it also has the first appearance of Slaughter Otter, which is now a full-on comic that he's working on. They're both working on the second issue to at the moment. So if you're a speculator, if you're somebody that is looking into first appearances, and Happy Astronaut #2 is that rare comic book that actually has a lot going on for it on the in the inside for these characters that have now gone on to have their own books. Um, so yeah, that's just a fun little background information of Rice Christopher's publication. David, got a question?
Yeah, actually, talking art. Um, so I guess the first part of this question is, would this be the first real experience with sequential art that you've done? And that being the case, I'm just wondering what that experience was like for you, because I know some artists actually struggle with doing that. They can do, like an image or whatever, but then when they're actually trying to do sequential art, they have some issues with that. So how was that experience for you?
So the first time I attempted it would have been after I posted my Gucci Nana print, which is a character from the Oh Yeah Comics universe, created by Art Baltazar and his daughter. And I created a print, and it was supposed to be like my last art thing I was going to draw because I was kind of having a real slump that year. And I was just like, I want to do one final thing. And that one final thing turned into the first thing that was going to launch a ridiculous stretch of drawing and ambition. And when I posted that, that is when Matt Fife saw it in the Oh Yeah Comics I Like Pink Very Much Lois Facebook group. And in that group, Matt Fife saw it, or he saw it through Art sharing it or something. And I didn't know that name. I didn't know Matt Fife. And he just goes, "Oh, this is awesome. Do you want to make comics?" And I messaged him privately. I'm like, "Oh, hey, thanks." And like, that's not what I do. I don't really, and I'm thinking he's gonna pitch a big idea about a guy going off into space and becoming a astronaut that is happy and out there with a robot friend, and I would have to create a world for him. But I'm like, oh no, I'm like, I'm not really. That's I said no and I turned it down, but I'm like, thank you, and he just goes, "Oh, he's like, well, he's like, Art Baltazar had wanted me to reach out to some artists for some, oh yeah, short stories." And immediately I'm like, "Oh, that's a whole different story." I'm like, "I have all these issues. I know these characters. I know all of this." And I'm like, "Yeah, what you got?" And basically, it started off as a one pager. And as I was reading a sort of an idea of a script, I started going. He's like, "All right, it might be about 2 pages." I'm like, "All right, that I think I can do that." And then I'm just kind of slowly mapping it out for the first time, never really doing that on my own, other than attempting it for other artists and writing for other artists. That things that never really, there's one thing that came to fruition, but for myself, um, I never came up with, I've never done that kind of work before where I had to storyboard it. And I got to a point where he gave me a script, and I mapped out 2 pages, and I told him like, "Can we do 3 pages? Because I think the last panel deserves a full page in itself." And he goes, "Hey, Art set up to 5 pages." I'm like, "Oh, cool." I'm like, "I don't want to do 5 pages." I'm like, "I only wanted to do 1 page." But as I was getting into it, I'm like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, or "Oh yeah," rather. I can do 2 pages. I'm like, all right, I need a third page. And we got that third page and we did it, and it's awesome. Due to the time of his publication and of all of his other like contracted work and big time stuff that he's working on, at this point, we're still waiting for those stories to be published. Never did I imagine that I would beat myself to the punch by coming out with a self-published my own creation, because that was meant to be the thing where I'm like, hey, I can call myself a published story artist and blah blah blah. And that led me into doing some more oh yeah stuff, and I just kept pitching stuff to the point where Art is like, It's like, all right, he's like, don't pitch too much because I don't want you to wait so long for you to to see this stuff in print. I looked at that as the nice way of him saying, hey, your stuff sucks, so like, just stop it. I think there's like 4 or 5 story credits, whether I'm the writer or the artist. So diving into the sequential storytelling, this was the most I've ever attempted beyond that 3 pager. But without that 3 pager and without that prompt of Matt Fife, without being able to play with the world of characters of All Yeah Comics, where I knew all of the characters, I knew their backgrounds, I knew their environments. If I didn't have all of that stuff, I don't think this thing would happen because I wouldn't have been encouraged to attempt it, to learn it, to take things, into ideas of different styles of backgrounds. And I'm trying to think if there's anything in here particular. And some of the drawings I've done, I've been like, oh, this is how art does background. So I'm going to like draw a cityscape in a style of how it's done in All Yeah Comics. And that would just kind of like lend me to, and actually I do city stuff in here, but I would start to just do my own thing. But without All Yeah Comics, without the invite from Matt Fife, I don't think I would have been capable of doing and a very ambitious, 16-page story plus 4 other bonus pages of stuff. But yeah, I think that answered your question.
Yeah.
In a way. So as we kind of wind down here, there's a couple things that I want to show off. And once again, if there's any other questions, feel free to let me know. But I wanted to show off some the cover design here. So I think the final video will still see the full cover in my window. So I'll have that here. But I did the cover maybe about 3/4 of the way into the book. I knew I wanted it to just be very standalone, much like Archie Comics, where you just kind of have something that's basically unrelated to what's on the inside. But a character, I wanted Bryce Christopher to just be running, and I used a lot of Daniel Craig James Bond images as my source material when looking at certain poses and even the style, right down to the suit and everything. So I'm like, you know what, I want him on there, and I love scenes in movies where you have big explosions of like, there's one in Wolverine, his origins movie, but the one that comes to mind is when Iron Man shoots a missile out of the wrist, I think, and then he just casually turns around. Nothing happens in the background for a while, and he's just walking away like the coolest guy on earth. And there's a big explosion that when characters don't react to explosions, behind them, I just love that kind of gimmick, that sort of cliche, type of thing. And I knew that's what I kind of wanted for my cover. So I figured I was going to, I have the next process image here. I plugged that in, but before I would get serious with drawing that, I wanted to come up with what is this trade or cover treatment going to be like for the title and everything. And using inspiration from Archie Comics, they had a very, a big blocky title, and that's what kind of led me to doing that. And I wanted to do a throwback to old comic books, Silver Age stuff with with the old prices on there. I didn't want to put a physical price on the book, and I figured a good way to placeholder would just say, "Hey, it's not 15 cents." And that would just allow me to price it accordingly based on what my print run was going to be and stuff like that. But I used a lot of old Archie comics as inspiration of how just to block out my top and bottom of the comic. And then once I went ahead with the where I had everything there, I went ahead with my explosion that's in the book, and then I used some EC comic style stuff with having the polar bear there. Rather than showing off a couple characters, I only had one room for one of them, so I put that in there. And then even like the banner treatment for a polar bear that's very much like the EC Comics style, Tales from the Crypt and everything. So I just love that design aspect. But the reason I didn't have room for the other characters in the book that I wanted to tease, it was very important that I wanted a word balloon on the cover. I love old comics that have dialogue on the book that once again have nothing to do with that what's in there. And I figure, what's he gonna say on there? And sure enough, he just says, "Hey kids, this is a word balloon on the cover. So he literally just calls it out because I just love that kind of gimmick for old comic books. And I thought about, is it going to be a thought balloon? Is it word bubble? What the terminology is? But going with word balloon, being a fan of John Suntress from Word Balloon, the podcast, him being part of the All Yeah Comics community, I knew that was going to be this very specific one rather than calling it a word bubble or whatever, different ways people can explain that. But yeah, so that is some of the cover images I wanted to share. I have a question here from, let's see, this one was from Brian Lynch from Hot Wing of Justice over on Instagram. We had him on Crimson Cowl. He's been on Cartoonist by Night. He asks me, what was the most difficult part of the process? Um, this I saw this question ahead of time and I tried to make up a fake scenario of like, all right, what could I say was difficult about this book? It was all 100% fun. There was nothing that tripped me up. Every time I worked on this and every I would chip away at it a couple hours a night, a couple times a week. I would do about a page a week that I would finish. But once I got towards the end of it and those last 5 pages, when I knew what that final panel was going to be, knowing that I had to give a satisfying conclusion to what I was doing here, rather than just having it end up in random insanity and people be like, oh, that was very abrupt and unsatisfying. Um, Once I knew that last panel reveal, um, the last 5 pages, I started doing a page a day because I just got more excited to work on it. And I got faster. I started, understanding the design of the characters in the world. The characters that show up in this book, the polar bear, there's, designing the kids even further. There's a boss character that Rice Christopher refers to in this book, a character that I'm saving for the experience of if you come up to the con table or for reading the book for the first time, because this character was inspired by a good friend of mine that kind of helped drive me in the early. I had her hold me accountable basically, where I'm like, I want you to like every day just send me text being like, hey, are you working on the book? And if I wasn't, I was gonna like turn off, my 17th viewing of the Marvels, and just be like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the book. Yes, I'm working on the book. So in a way, I kind of made my friend my boss. And when I was getting to designing a character that I knew I needed a character in there, I did an homage and basically made, I wrote my friend into the book in a way. It's a cartoony animal character, but I named the character after her and went ahead and did that. And I did show her their reveal because I wanted to make sure it was all cool and stuff. And part of me wanted me to have her see it for the first time in print, but I was too excited to share it. And so that is the one thing that I there was nothing that was really difficult. I think the one thing was just maybe hoping that it was going to print correctly in the book. I went off of templates that Matt Rogers, that I've mentioned. I asked him for templates of what he uses for to make sure you have enough room with the borders, so your dialogue and your art doesn't get buried in the binding. It doesn't get off page. It doesn't bleed off page, whatever. And I used the settings that he used. Towards the end, there was part of me thinking like, while I was using his settings, I probably should have checked maybe 2 pages in with him just to make sure I was doing it correctly. So I sent him the whole book, and he formatted it and went through his side of things and his screen in it because he's now made several, half a dozen comic books, and he had no notes. He's like, "Yep, it's all great. Here you go." And I asked for him on notes if there was anything I need to tweak, not asking for like, oh, is this drawn correctly or perspective or continuity? I honestly didn't really care about any of that kind of stuff. That was the nature of the improv style. But I just saying on a technical aspect, I'm like, is this a comic book? Is this going to print? And am I going to be happy with it? And I had a proof copy. I got that. And I should mention Comics Wellspring is, which I believe is what David went through as well.
Yes.
Correct. And I got a proof copy, showed up in the mail. I read it 3 times. I inspected as closely as I could. And I'm like, this is exactly what I was expecting. The colors were as bright as what I was looking at on the iPad. Nothing seemed dulled down. Everything fit where it needed to. There's a good ad there for Comics Wellspring. And I'm just like, so going back to Brian Lynch, what was the most difficult part of the process? There wasn't one. It was 100% fun, and I was just so happy all the way through. Is it a perfect comic book? That's up for the readers to decide when they go through and look at the artwork and read the story and all that kind of stuff. When it was done, that's when I started realizing that there's an audience for it. But I think that helps with the fact that what you see in this book was made with 100% fun. I had a blast doing it. It was funny, adventurous, and now it's just up to the audience to see if they want to buy a book about a crispy rice man who goes on adventures. So one other question here from Winston Gambro, who, once again, we've also had Crimson Cowl Comic Club, and I don't know when these episodes are coming out, but in the can, he has recorded a Cartoonist by Night episode as well. So we hung out with Winston the other night at the time of this recording. So he asked, did any comics inspire it? Archie, once again, being the influence of the structure. I would say when it comes to like story elements and tone, I think a lot of stuff from The Tick played into it, with just being like parody superhero-ness. Rice Christopher, he's very full of himself, not in like a demeaning way. He's a very nice guy and everything, but there's things that he claims in the book that he created and invented, and it's up for the reader to decide if he's telling the truth on that or not. And once again, he's telling a story to his grandkids, and one could almost think like, all right, he's telling his children these stories and we're seeing them, but are we just seeing a version of it of how he's telling a story? Is this is he a superhero? Maybe that's something to be told in a future issue down the line on what's actually true, because all of these stories that I plan to do are just done through him retelling the adventures to his young audience. But the inspiration of that, so Archie Comics, Oh Yeah Comics, once again, if Oh Yeah Comics and Art Baltazar and Franco and Scoot and Matt Fife and Matt Rogers and Troy Dungara and D. Brad Gibson and David Gloyd the second with making their book and going ahead and making dreams happen. All of those people that were, close people to me, friends and extended family in that way. All of those people have kind of driven me to make this book happen. And so all of them and their work and doing their stuff kind of inspired it. But I don't think there's anything design wise that is going to pop out just being like, oh, this feels like this or this feels like that. Maybe other people will tell me that and it'll just hit me and I'll be like, oh, of course. Because, yeah, maybe it does have an Archie Comics feel. Maybe it does have, oh, yeah, comics feel. But I think those comics are the things. Madman comics and kind of the, Madman, the character is just an adventure guy and stuff. And so every comic book that I've ever read, whether I liked it or not, was the inspiration to plug into here, whether it's how I do the lettering and the narration boxes and the logos and the homages and things like that. I think that kind of answers it. Katie?
Yeah, so I was wondering, do you foresee ever doing some like variants of Rice Christopher, like the peanut butter Rice Christopher? And then more seriously, what does the future look like for this character and your publishing goals?
Great questions. So there has been some ideas, and some friends have said like, well, you have this crispy rice cereal, which is the terminology I'm using because that's
Mm-hmm.
a term that store brands and everyone can use. And
Yep.
like, hey, what if it's a chocolate one? What if it's a peanut butter one? This and that. I explore that a little bit with the children because
Mm-hmm.
we do see them with, as I mentioned, with sprinkles and with Jimmy's
Yeah,
stuff like that. So there's an example of some of the characters. There's a couple cameos in this book that I don't want to reveal. So
sure.
even though it's the first page, there's something right away on the first page for something that I want that person to see it in person. Um, so there's definitely here's a good way of answering that.
Okay.
I don't think people, I think people will expect a lot of cereal related puns and jokes and character parodies and stuff like that. Like there's not like a Captain Crunch guy, there's not a Toucan Sam. It's really not a serial parody book, and it's
Hmm.
something completely different, I think, in a positive way that when you open up this comic book and read it, I don't think it's going to be anything that you would expect by seeing a crispy rice man. And
Oh.
I like that idea because maybe some of those are like kind of go to,
Hmm.
maybe people would expect that. Maybe they'll be disappointed on that front.
Sure.
I think there's a really fun, wacky story in here that'll kind of surprise people. But going forward, there's definitely a lot of avenue of, we have a variant of him in Happy Astronaut #2 because the
That's
characters
right.
look different and something happened to that character and it's not this version of the character. So there's definitely a lot of room to play with it. And when it comes to the second question, which I believe you said just about ideas if I'm doing future stories and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So regardless of how this book sells, if it sells 5 copies and at the place I'm going to advertise later,
Hmm.
or if it sells 500 copies, I'm going to make more stories of Rice Christopher. And there's actually
Oh.
something in the works at the moment. I thought I could do probably 2 of these a year and I'd probably get faster with it. And I'm like, you know what? January 1st, I'm going to dive into it and start with a new year. And that's when
Ooh.
I dive
All
into it.
right.
But then inspiration hit, and now I'm mapping out something that I want to come out with this year already, which would serve as a using the method that David is using with offering, comics on the website and kind of giving people a taste of the world, and then also selling completely new stuff in a physical book. So I do want
Right.
to come out with the Rice Christopher thing that's going to be a 3 or 4 page Archie size story that would serve as a first time if nobody picked up this book and they saw this thing for free, then it'd be like, oh, there's a whole book about it. Yeah, I'll pay that X amount of money to buy a book. So there are going to be more stories of Race Christopher, and it is going to be bringing in characters that I had created just in my mind or on the page that over the course of the last 10 years of things that never saw the light of day. So there's a lot of fun that I'm getting excited to throw these things in there. So regardless of physical sales, there will Rice Christopher will return. So
Oh, that's awesome. I love that ambition.
thank you, David.
No.
Yeah, so kind of taking off from where you're at, and it sounds like there might be a few things in the works that you maybe can't talk about. But I know where this book is making its big debut,
Yes,
which, as you mentioned, you'll be going into shortly. So I won't go into that right here. But beyond that, beyond it making its first appearance out there in public for people to buy, um, where is this going to be available? Is this something that you're going to just be selling at cons? Do you have some ideas on online sales or anything like that? Where can we get our hands on it?
that's an excellent question because that is part of the promotion here. So this comic book will make its triumphant debut the 1 year anniversary rather, of me selling art at a convention. David Gloyd was kind enough to invite me to advertise the comic club and bring my Guji Nana print to MightyCon in Milwaukee, and that was September of 2023. And that's where both of us, as an artist, David has done conventions there as a seller through Crimson Cowl Comic and Collectibles. But as artists, we both had artwork there. I started to make a bunch of prints and all that stuff. And I started this comic in February. I didn't want to promote it. That I'm like, hey, I'm making this thing. You'll see it in fall. Fall comes around and something happened, or I got sick of it and I gave up. And then I'm like, oh, we'll see it in winter. Hey, we'll see it in 2025. I didn't want to build all this expectation for something until I actually had a book for the first time doing it. Until I actually had a book that I could physically hold up and show people. And so from February until about June and beginning of July, I worked on this book and I finished it. And I was about 2 months ahead of my unofficial schedule. and I was just going to spend that time to get all the merchandise, which I'll be showing off previews of that, doing setting up promotion, doing the interview stuff, and all of that kind of stuff, knowing that I could do a relaxed release and to line up for a great moment for the 1 year anniversary at MightyCon in Milwaukee. So that is going to be coming up, and I have a graphic for that very show. So this will be my brand new comic book, my first ever comic book, fun for all ages. 16 pages of adventure in one full circle story that's accessible to anybody. It has action, comedy, adventure, and it has activities. There is a maze in here. Each comic book, I'll show this when I don't have the window up, is going to come with some bonuses. But there's a couple activities. There's some comic strips in here, original comic strips involving Rice Christopher. So those are fun things that are in there. All of that is a 20-page interiors plus designs front and back with the front and inside covers and everything like that. This will be Saturday, September 14th, 2024, Wisconsin State Fair Park in West Allis, Wisconsin. Go to mightyconshows.com for tickets and information. You can definitely buy tickets at the show, but I believe they do like early discounts and stuff like that if you get on the wait list through their website. But if you're uncomfortable with that, you can just go up to the show too. They always have a very organized entry line and stuff like that. But there's a lot of cool guests, a lot of their staples that are going to be there and stuff, and a couple. I think there's a Power Ranger that's going to be there. A couple cool people. But yeah, Milwaukee MightyCon is going to be the very first day of official sales. I wanted to make it exclusive to that convention for the sake of celebrating that. I couldn't believe I did that last year, which is selling art and just pretending like I was an official person there. I did the work and I had stuff and people bought stuff, and but I never thought that 1 year later that I would show up there still doing it, and especially bringing my own comic book, because I was just going to rely on, oh yeah, comic stuff being printed, and I was just going to be like, yep, that's a fun thing I'll do, and if art wanted more I would do more, but really had no intention of doing this. So David had asked where it's going to be available after the fact. So once I get back, once I see what the inventory is, friends and family, there have been some pre-order notices out there so that people get copies who are unable to attend the show. But I'm definitely encourage people to check out the comic show, because there's lots of comic creators there, and there's so much to see, and it's a very cheap entry fee and stuff like that. But I will be selling in person. If you know me in person, if you know me at my job, I'm going to have copies there and just be like, oh, yep, here's what it is. There's going to be information online through my social media at Anthony Laatsch, Laatsch, through Crimson Cowl social media. I run all that kind of stuff through Cartoonist social media. Anywhere you hear me and see me talk, all you have to do is send a message and we will have that information. If you want a copy of this comic book, you're definitely going to get one, whether I have to reorder more. There's nothing that's nothing going to be different about a second printing. It's going to look just as same as the first one. If you want me to write first printing on your copy, I'll do that as part of the signature. But basically what I'm telling people is that if you want a copy of this book, you're 100% going to get one. And all I have to do is hit a button to reorder more. I went aggressive with the number of copies. I know I'll probably have a good, strong family and friend support and stuff like that. I want to have as many as I can for strangers to help promote what I'm doing, promote Crimson Cowl Comic Club, promote Cartoonist by Night. But essentially, if you want one, you're going to get one. So all you have to do is let me know, and we're going to have that happen. At that show, I'm also going to be selling original art sketches, prints, stickers, and bookmarks. And as we wind down for the show, this will be previewing the merchandise for this character. So I am going to be offering 4 different mini prints. I've done some bigger poster prints in the past, but I'm going mini prints because they fit nicely inside the comic book bag and board. So I wanted it to be accessible and easily to send out and package wise. So we are going to have Rice Christopher, and this is the classic pose when I'm advertising and wearing his t-shirt too. Him fixing his cuffs, very James Bond style there. I'm going to be offering a version of Rice Christopher that I'm calling Kid Christopher. As you'll see, it says lunchtime on there. That'll make sense if you check out this comic book. Rice Christopher and this Kid Christopher version, we see a very small glimpse of this character within this book. It's different than what we've seen with it's not a grandchild. This is a young Rice Christopher. And there's a lot of potential for me to do some comic strip stories that I want to work on as well. And so looking at Kid Christopher, a lot of people, there's a pose back here on a t-shirt. I've been getting a lot of positive response when I've been sharing that character, and I'm very excited to do some more with this character within the Rice Christopher world. There are two other prints with that character that I want to save the reveal for the comic book. So there's four prints altogether, two of Rice and two of our other main character of the book. There's two main characters. Each comic book, those ones you can purchase separately, but each comic book is going to come with two free coloring pages. So here's a new pose for Rice Christopher here. He's looking pretty cool. Thumbs up. That seems to be, I do a lot of thumbs up in my life, so I've kind of thrown that into the character. And so there will be two coloring sheets that are going to come with the purchase of every comic book. Yeah, so one is of Rice, and the other one is of that character that you'll have to buy the book to find out. There are going to be four sticker options. My friend Lavi over at Lavi HQ, she's created some of my other stickers that I've done at the show. She has her own web comic, Deck Kingdom, and she has all of her own characters and world, and she also has a sticker business on the side. So we are going to see the Rice Christopher with the cuffs, and then the Kid Christopher walking pose. Christopher walking. I didn't mean to say Christopher walking. I didn't mean to say any of that.
Put that in the notes. You write that down.
That's gonna have to be a joke now for one of the stories. Hey, is that Christopher walking? Like what? No, that's just Rice Christopher. So, anyways, future Anthony, seriously, write that down. So there are two stickers here, and the other two stickers, once again, are the character I don't want to reveal. If you go to the Mighty Con show, there's going to be a special deal that's going to be advertised at the table as well, where you can get a combo pack where if you want one of everything, it's a discounted price. If you want a choice of two stickers and two prints along with the comic, that'll be another combo price. But choosing one of those two or both of those packages are the only way that you're going to pick up a free original Rice Christopher sketch. I've been working on some here. I've got another page of them as well, which I might be able to turn as I'm trying to hold everything together here. So I've been drawing crispy rice versions of some recognizable characters, and these will be for sale after the fact, but I'm trying to draw as many for the convention and for anybody that buys these specific combo packs. They will get a choice of one of these cards that are all pre-drawn and ready to go. Just kind of an exclusive little bonus there. And yeah, that shows off all of the merchandise that is related to Rice Christopher starting at Mighty Con Milwaukee, September 14th, 2024. I'll be there representing Cartoonists by Night as well as Crimson Cowl Comic Club through Crimson Cowl Media, and I will be there with my partner in crime there, David Gloyd. You'll be at the con as well. Can you let people know what you'll be offering?
I will be offering a variety of things. I'll still have some leftovers from the old store days, but as we go through the cons, there's less and less of that because I'm not creating new stuff. I didn't create any of that. I'm just selling it. I do have the physical comic version, Tales from the North, The Dungeon. So if you haven't picked up a copy of that yet, it's a great book, in my humble opinion. That was written by myself. All the art is done by my son, David Gloyd II. And so you can get that. My version is not signed. It did not come with the free sketch card. However, come to the MightyCon. You can pick up a copy, signed, free sketch card, and you can do that. I will also have a lot of other original art. I'll have some 11 by 17 prints. I will have some other various sketch cards, couple different sizes there. So that's all some stuff that you can find there. I don't think that Katie will be joining me, although it's still up in the air. But you will still be able to find her specimen trading cards there. I know those are have been kind of a big hit. We've recently added a Facebook page. Need to get some more stuff on there for people to see some of the humorous things that she makes on these cards. But that's something that you can look forward to there. Sometimes I feel like I sell more of her stuff than I do of my own. But that'll be it. Otherwise, you can check out our website, crimsoncowl.com. It's got free comics on there, free versions of Tales from the North. It's got some other stuff. You can find bios, like for Anthony Laatsch, for example. There's a little bio that's got to be updated since he's got a comic book out now. We're going to have to put that in there and update that. So check that out. You can find out more information on us there through Facebook and other social media. And otherwise, yeah, hopefully we'll see you in September at MightyCon.
Excellent. And if you want some more information about Rice Christopher, there is a trailer that is over on YouTube. You just type in Rice Christopher and you'll find it. It's on the Cartoonist by Night channel. We also have an episode of Cartoonist by Night where we actually got the whole entire gang together, which has been difficult. We just have, whatever combination of people on the show, but we all came together to celebrate Rice Christopher. And I talk about the creation, and we see Troy, Tunes by Troy, draw the character, which was awesome to see. And also is one of those things where I'm like, all right, Troy, do you want to just keep drawing this character and I'll just write it? Because look how perfect it is. But if you want to see that, all you have to do is go to Cartoonist by Night. You can see that. Thinking back, there's different things that I said in this episode, especially thanks to the questions here. So they're not just you're not just getting the same exact information at both times. So I feel that both episodes will serve a good purpose. Plus, you see Troy get to draw Rice Christopher. Yeah. So yeah, definitely check that out. And once again, MightyCon in Milwaukee, September 14th, mightyconshows.com. And if you cannot attend and you want a copy of this book, you'll 100% get a copy of this book. Just reach out to me and we'll get those orders ready. And that's all I have to say. So that is going to do it. I assume there's no lingering questions. I think I captured everything I needed to. Thank you to everybody here for joining us for this experience. It's been fun, usually hosting these things for other creators, and it felt kind of crazy to be the subject matter of this episode, and everybody's love for comics, both from Cartoonist by Night and Crimson Cowl Comic Club and Oh Yeah Comics, and everybody that I've met along the way have basically contributed just by merely being a friend. Contributing the energy into making this thing happen. So this is Rice Christopher, the Wednesday afternoon special, the full-on comic book that will be available September 2024. When we started this episode, we said it was time for lunchtime, and now I think it's time for dinner time. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Slimer.